Hello and welcome to Focus on the Arts. I'm Paul Kreider, Dean of the College of Creative Arts at West Virginia University in Morgantown. Focus on the Arts hopes to inform our audience about new and or interesting arts events and practices occurring at West Virginia University and in the state of West Virginia. Today's show serves to highlight the exciting technical theater programs found at the School of Theater and Dance in the College of Creative Arts at WVU. Here with me today are two guests, Clinical Professor of Lighting Design, Alan McEwen. Also here is Technical Director in the School of Theater and Dance at WVU, Professor Stephen Nineswander. We're happy to have you both on the show today. Appreciate you coming. So let's just talk real quick. Technical Director at the School of Theater and Dance, what does that mean for our audience? Tell us what you do.
What a technical director does is the designers take their vision for their show and their drawings are done, and the technical director is then going to turn that into a three-dimensional reality. Mm-hmm. So it's my job to draft the sets, get them built, manage the process with budget, and so when you walk into a performance and you've got this set and any sort of tricks or things that come about in it, it's the technical director to solve those situations and make it a reality.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so draft the sets. The designers don't draft anymore. Well, you guys have to do that?
What the designers do is the designers produce elevations that are, here's what the finished product I want it to look like. Like the fireplace here, they would draft this look. And it's my job to do the construction drawings of how is all the workings behind. You have this wall right here. How is the framing and all that going to happen behind? So it stands up and takes this two-dimensional picture and turns it into a actual 3D object.
Okay, great. And lighting design? How does one get into lighting design?
Well, I got into lighting design actually by just enjoying the power of light, which is very subtle but yet very emotionally powerful, I think, to most of us. And it's like a lot of technical theater. There's a lot of math and tech, technical skills, but balancing those to create art is the balance between the two is what's really it feeds me, at least.
Okay, so when a person is going through training, let's say tech director, for example, you're talking about taking this fireplace and doing construction drawings. What kind of training does one have to do that? You learn that in a theater school, or do you learn that in an art school or drawing school?
Well, within a theater school, it's a little more focused, but there are skills that you gather from other industries. Growing up, I did a lot of building with my dad, building things around the house and playing in the garage, and that's one of the reasons I started playing with construction more. And so within the courses within a theater school, you learn how to draft for the theatrical industry. There are very specific standards and way things are to be presented. That give the information that people in a shop might learn. There's stagecraft class where you learn all about the different types of materials, how to build some of our standard objects and all the different items that are about a stage, whether it's the rigging system or traps in the floor. And then you get into more advanced classes that deal with automation and rigging. Do you have a lift coming up? Do you have things flying in? Of all those aspects that train you in all the different ways to put on a show and the backstage things that, are there that it takes a lot of time to put into those.
That's great. So I imagine that keeping up with technology is quite important as you're dealing with technical theater. Things evolve over time, and new bells and whistles and gadgets to play with, and we certainly have to train students on those things as well. So, do you have any new tools or toys, I should say, tools and toys in the School of Theater and Dance lately that you're dealing with?
Well, one of the things that was just shown on the screen that our students are playing with is what's called an Arduino, and that's essentially it's a small computer board that is programmable. And one of our students saw it at an annual conference, was really interested in it, so we purchased some equipment to allow him to be able to play with that and discover it. And kind of an end goal that we've gone through with that is that into a wireless sound area, and the fact that you can take these boards, and whether they're triggered by drum pads or mics or whatnot, that it's going to, with the code you write into it, trigger a prop on stage that when someone does something on stage, you can get sound out of your system. So theoretically, you've got an actor wandering around, and they're not attached to anything. It's not like they're having to drag wires or mic, but it can wirelessly communicate to the system to play around.
That's great. And anything, you got some new toys last year, didn't you?
Yes, indeed. Some new moving lights to sort of add to what we already have. And I think at some point you'll see some video of us repairing said moving lights.
Okay.
Maintenance and repair, I think one of the things that attracts a lot of people to theater is that it's really there's lots of hands-on learning, and we certainly do that at WVU. Where the lamp blows, we're not going to ship it back to the manufacturer. We're going to take it apart and discover how to put it back together.
Right, buy some replacement parts and do the work.
Exactly, because it's
good
so
training.
big and expensive to move around.
Right.
We also deal with the latest software. I mean, lighting consoles are a very specialized computer for what we do. And we beta test software mostly for light boards. We do some hard light boards occasionally, but for one of the leading industry manufacturers. So we always have something in the cycle, and there's this current release is very exciting. Lots of new changes. Some cycles will be small, little fixes, but there's some big new stuff.
So that's actually a fascinating thing, an opportunity for students. I mean, there's a chance to go to school and play with the latest technology.
Yes.
And learn on it, and then be prepared when you leave to work on the latest technology. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah.
Students have a great opportunity to do that. That's wonderful.
And the hands-on aspect is really important within the training, because a lot of times when you're doing shows and you're putting them up, you do system checks every night before you go into a performance. And, many of those start 6:30 at night, whether you're running through tracks and the rigging system and check, or whether you're checking all your lighting instruments. And that hands-on training allows you to deal with it right then before, because a light goes out. You pick up the phone to try and call customer service at 6:30 at night. Usually they've gone home, depending on the company. So the hands-on training is really important, so you know how to solve these situations and come about successful.
Under pressure, because house opens. They don't like to hold
the audience
that.
is there.
The show must go on.
Exactly.
Yeah, I hate that audience. I hate that announcement when you sit in the audience and due to technical difficulty.
Yes. Yes.
But we will have a slight delay, but that's not a good thing. But I haven't experienced that at WVU, so that's good. That's great. So how are we doing with our student population now in tech theater in WVU? We've got a good cohort of students that are working hard, but there's always room for more, I assume.
There's always room for more, and we've got a good bunch of students in that are stepping up to lots of positions and getting great designing training and hands-on construction training and TDing shows and lighting design. That there's always room to bring, and the more students you have, the more it allows to them to learn from each other and to gather off each other. So it's not just a single point focus that's coming.
Right. So there are definitely a number of shows that on which they can work and train, and then this last week. I mean, obviously we're taping this in March 1st, but in late February there was a new studio production that was on this last weekend that was completely student run, and so that was an opportunity for them to really spread their wings and do some good tech work, and that's great. And everything's done with supervision.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's basically you two guys that are doing that supervision and that training. Let's just talk about safety real quick.
Safety is probably our first and most important aspect. That you want everyone to go home at night safely, and you've got, when you're designing things, even you're looking at how a performer can do this safely. How do everyone interact with it? We just recently in the fall completed a production of Blood Wedding by Lorca. And one of the aspects that was brought about through the design conversations was the character of the moon. The director wanted to lift up in the air and to be this presence up, I think it was about 14 feet. We ended up lifting a person in a circus aerial ring. And so to make sure that performer was always safe, one was a lot of practice time on the ring so the performer was comfortable. But also we looked at the stunt industry and what they do. And so the performer was actually wearing a corseted stunt vest underneath their garment that allowed them to be safetied into the rig. And so at no point when the performer was up in the air were they not securely attached and tied in. And then you also look at designing the system so that if the unfortunate happens that someone does fall, that the system can hold that weight and take those loads. And with that whole situation I laid it out there was 4 students who were really interested in tackle this, and I laid it out and gave them some rough idea. We did what's called a sandbag transfer system. So you have a set of sandbags and weights backstage, so at any one time the system is always in weight, whether the performer is in the ring or not. And I said, here are the parameters. You guys go tackle this and design. And with supervision, they brought back drawings, and I said, well, you want to adjust this and this. They went through and did it, and it was completely built by the students, and they tested it, and we're extremely happy about it.
And I'd also add, we've added, actually I should say Stephen has added a health and safety course, because theater, we can get away with a lot because we're temporary build and whatnot, and so there's a lot of specialized, I think, knowledge that we need to, impart to people practicing theater, so that we, you can just stick 2 wires in an outlet and get power, but there's a reason not to do that. And so that's part of what we've come up with.
So this is a health and safety course that covers the technical aspect as well as the lighting aspect. So you're dealing with electricity as well as with weights.
We deal with all sorts of situations in the health and safety course. A lot of it is about the safety of them personally going through the career and as they advance, as well as them managing situations. Some of the trainings we do is we had 10 students that went through the course the first time. They all came out certified in CPR, first aid. We had fire extinguisher training. We teamed with the Environmental Health and Safety Office on the university, and they came in and trained students with respirators, with fire codes, the life safety code, with OSHA, and all these things that, they're expected to understand when they leave college and they're working for an organization. A lot with the respirators is that you're there painting a set or you're using some dyes or stains. You're the one responsible for your health. The management isn't always going to walk around and point and go, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. So it's making sure that they understand what they need to do to protect themselves so they can make it a longevity, this career.
It's so important. And we have to ensure the safety of not only the actors on the stage, but the safety of all the people working backstage.
Yeah.
And that's key. Talk about, you've got students who are walking up on catwalks. And hanging lights and doing different things. How do we keep them safe?
Well, first, if you're not comfortable with heights, we don't force you to, climb ladders. But in one of our spaces, we have fall arrest training. So before everyone's wearing a fall arrest harness and a lanyard, essentially that's kind of like a bungee cord, but it's probably a bad analogy. But that would arrest your fall. And to just even work in the space, you get that training, and that's an industry standard. Fall arrest training. Every company will make sure that you've gone through that. And we also have other. We don't have loose change in your pocket when anything loose up above other people. And we also have instituted actually that the people on the deck are wearing hard hats, and that's common in upper end of theater, but certainly my high school never did such things.
Right. Yeah. I think back too of what the kind of things we got away with in high school.
Oh yeah.
Times have changed a little.
Times have changed. Yeah.
But yeah, when we're striking a set, there's a lot going on very quickly. You could have anywhere of 20 to 30 people all moving around and working on different items, and all of a sudden pulling a board down and walking away with it. And so the hard hats are just, it's a good precaution. And right away, usually some students are like, oh, I don't want to wear hard hats. And then all of a sudden the first strike, they knock their head against something. They're like, okay, I get it. They understand that it's for their safety. And
I was watching. They were doing some work on stage before the opera a couple of weeks ago, and there's a whole language that they use too to warn people that things are happening.
Yes. Loose hardware overhead.
Yeah, I mean there's this whole lingo, and students learn that lingo, and they need to be aware that it's coming and happening and know what it means.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating. It's interesting that students can go into training and really function quickly in that kind of environment. let's talk about, since we're on safety, talk about electrical safety. We teach them about how wonderful electricity is, but also how dangerous it can be, I assume.
Absolutely. I mean, it's knowing what's the safe practice is, is a must.
Right.
While we certainly, can train. I could wire a house. There are things I know that's also knowing where you should stop and say, this is a professional, code electrician sort of job. So, you are aware of National Electric Code on certain levels, and certainly when you're speccing equipment and installing things, I might go back to that, information. But just from a practical standpoint, how small of a extension cord should you use for that 2,000 watt light?
Mm-hmm.
Answer being not small at all. Because
or the extension cord starts getting warm. It's bad.
Right, because that's bad things can happen. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Yeah, those are things that you don't think about normally.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And even when you're repairing fixtures, that capacitors hold a charge. You can when you're taking apart some electronics, things can make sure things are grounded and safe. When you repair something, you repair it safely, so make sure that it is grounded and everything is put back together the way it should be, so that when you go to use it, it doesn't, zork you.
There's a lot of I could think of some students that we have currently, but also I think back into my youth, and there were those kids who were very involved in theater because it was fun to be around the theater, and they weren't necessarily the ones that were on stage. They were the students that were backstage and doing things. And so thinking about those students, what kind of computer skills or knowledge do they need to have if they're thinking about pursuing a career in college as a tech theater design student?
Well, I think with any of it, we train you as you come into school. I mean, some of our prominent programs there's drafting programs in AutoCAD and Vectorworks that are, depending on which area of focus you have, is ones you learn. We teach that. We have Photoshop classes that if you're a props artisan, and we're working on Cherry Orchard right now, which takes place in around 1890 in Russia. You can't go buy a newspaper in 1890 in Russia. We've looked. So you've got to learn to be able to create those items and be able to do that. Right. And then, there's, for the stage managers, Word and Excel, and so you can form reports and form documentation that's going to inform the crew of what they need to do in a show. And Alan knows more about the sound programs, but there's all kinds, and that comes about in the courses that we teach.
Yeah, I mean, some of the software that we train on is, of course, like Vectorworks for CAD, but there's a number of free sound editing programs as well as some that you pay for. We use those. Like I mentioned, I think earlier, the lighting consoles are kind of their own beast. Most of them are Windows-based, if you want to get into the nitty-gritty. And there's certainly positions in the industry for programmers of that exact item, and the industry loves people who are not only computer programming savvy but theater savvy, because it's such a specialty market.
Right.
It doesn't work like Office.
Right. So therefore, since you're doing a lot of this training and giving them the specialized skills they need, if they come to school with basic computer knowledge, obviously how to turn it on, how to send email, how to maybe get around Photoshop a little bit, and how to do some social networking and basic computer skills, they can do all right in college.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Absolutely. That's cool. Yeah. Good. So that basically tells everybody and me that we're working through all this design and tech training from a very basic level all the way up. So
you always, within the program, you have a wide variety of students, and where they come in depends a lot on the high school they attended and what kind of tech program they had there. We've had ones that have come in and I've designed a lot and really understand and have taken apart lights before, and we've had ones that are just really interested in theater and want to do it and haven't decided where they want to focus.
Right.
Either way, we go through and you for the ones that are more advanced, you create more skilled projects that allow them to take their basis and move it even farther than they've got. And you know, we bring up the other ones along, and it's about a lot within the art form is about how far you want to go. You can take it as far as you want, and that drive and determination, which is a lot of why people do theater, is in you, and it's as far as you can take it.
Right. So let's just think. We talk about a couple of recent graduates. So what are they doing today?
One of our recent graduates, Ben Lauer, he's actually teaching at the University of Southern Mississippi, so down there.
Right.
And we've got others that are designing lights and.
I've got freelance designers in the Pittsburgh area, cruise ship stage technicians, which can be stage management, lighting, sound, the whole ball of wax, or variants thereof.
Now, there's a guy, John Kasilica, that graduated. I think he was an outstanding graduating student in School of Theater last year.
Yes.
And what's he doing today?
Actually, he's almost done with his cruise ship gig.
He's
right
on
now.
the cruise ship. Okay.
He worked at
End Station Theater Company. He's returning there this summer.
Good.
So and we've got students that have gone around to do a number of summer stocks. We've actually got one of our students last year, the year before that, was an intern with the Public Theater in New York, and so they're all around.
Oh, and the O'Neill.
Yeah, that's interesting that you just triggered something in my mind that I remembered. It. Ben Lauer was a student last year that entered our student and faculty mentored research competition, and he submitted a technical design
for the Crucible.
That he was technical director on that show. Is that correct?
Yes.
And he basically documented his whole process of how he went through technical direction of that production, and did that with you mentoring him. And now he's teaching at the University of Southern Mississippi.
Yeah. No, he's
that's great experience at the university, isn't it?
Yeah,
So,
and he took through that, and there was we went to one of our theaters downtown, the Metropolitan Theater, and he installed it, did all documentation from design to finish, and had to figure out custom rigging to work within the space because there was a number of items that happened on top of each other, and did a fantastic job with it.
That's great. Yeah, I remember that. That was a great project, and you mentored one last year at one as well.
Yes.
Was that John?
Yes, it was. Yes. He submitted, I think, 2 actually. But,
John did 2 fascinating projects because of his training, as I recall, last year. One was the light show.
Yes.
That was pretty spectacular. Had the music was a nice addition to moving lights and everything else that was good. And we had that actually at commencement. And it was a lot of fun. The audience loved it. It was a great show. But then he did tell me about the other project he did. I can't remember. It was a fog machine.
Yes,
right?
yes. He made a dry ice fogger. So starting with a 55-gallon drum and putting appropriate thermostats and fan and cage and a pump to pump the hot water over. Commercial ones are, what, 2,000-3,000?
3,000.
And we built it for parts essentially for about 1,000. So it was one of those things to add to our inventory of toys.
So I'm happy to say we're consciously stewarding the state's revenue.
Absolutely.
And giving training in the process.
Right. Well, the technology can be so expensive. And that's one of the things that I know we constantly are doing is sort of researching what's out there, what's going to be the best choice for what we do and the training we want to give. And it's a moving scale, so it never really stops. But
let's talk real quick about sound. So you're teaching sound as well?
Yes.
And what's the latest thing that students are learning about sound technology? And
sound in the last, I'd say even in the last 5 years, has gone through the ease at which we can digitally manipulate sound is fantastic, and it's kind of revolutionized sound. Interestingly enough, that I think theater has always existed with sound and music, and it's always been a huge part. And then there's been times where it's not as big, but it's becoming, especially with some directors, because of the capabilities we have now with digital editing and playback. At a keystroke, you can have the helicopter traversing the space, or 8 different things happening at once. And on an analog console, you're manually moving faders. The sound comes up in this speaker or out in this speaker. And one of the programs that we use a lot is called QLab, which is there's a free download version with only 2-channel outs. But that's probably my biggest new thing that I've been adding, and it can add a huge amount to the sort of soundscape of the production if it needs it. And it's really exciting, and it's becoming even a bigger part of the industry. We often complain in sound about our budget numbers, which but it's becoming a bigger and bigger part of, I think.
Well, I think a lot of it is just the art form staying up with what the audience expects these days. A lot with movies and stuff moving around is that you see, huge shows like Cirque and Spider-Man and Blue Man Group and all those that come about and the technology in them and where they, now I'm talking about the sound moving around. You get that when you go to movies, is that staying of what audiences' perceptions are of the art form and making that forward to them.
Yeah, that's the audience is changing. Is right? So
absolutely.
The medium changes and technology changes, and so it's an evolving process that you have to stay current in. So not only because we just want to stay up on what's out there, what's happening, but we also have to keep our students that way as well, keep them current. So it's a constantly evolving thing, and I admire the work that you guys do, not just on a day-to-day basis, but in the long term of keeping us, guys like me, aware of what's happening out there, and coming into the office saying we got to buy some of these new motion lights. These are pretty cool. So I really do appreciate the work on that. So keeping up with technology, light and sound, technical theater. Anything else we need to cover here today on this? This has been fascinating for me, and hopefully for our viewers as well. So I really appreciate you coming on the show. I'm excited about the trends and where we're going. The new season, is it full of great technical things happening in the theater season next year?
I think some of the shows have got some real opportunities to be able to do. Our musical we're looking at next year is Cabaret, and that could have all sorts of things in it. So I think it'll be good.
We're doing a Shakespeare next year too.
Yep.
Is that right?
Henry IV.
Great. Is that going to be updated, or is that going to
It's going to be an adaptation. I believe the director is working with someone in English, even to sort of put together an adaptation of both parts.
Okay. Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. As we wrap up our show for today, I wish to thank our guests for joining me and sharing their experiences. And please let me also thank the staff here at the Library Commission and Cultural Center for their work on this production. Their efforts are very, very much appreciated. I want to thank you for watching, and if you'd like any further information about the College of Creative Arts at WVU, please visit our website at www.ccarts.wvu.edu. By visiting the site, you can also link to us on Facebook. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.